right, welcome to the Fragments of Silicon Reviews session for the week. Up this time, we've got three games. First up, John Shafer's At the Gates. So I suppose the first question that might come to mind is, who is John Shafer? Well, it so happens we have an answer for that, as he is the previously, he was the head designer of Civilization 5, and he also did some work on Civilization 4. If you want to learn more about him and the creation process of the game, we interviewed him a few months ago, ahead of the release of At the Gates here. And what At the Gates is referring to, well, it's the classic barbarians at the gates, and the gates are at Rome. This is about, this is a 4X strategy game. Not a surprise, given, he worked on the granddaddy of, all 4X games, Civilization. But this is a 4X strategy game about the fall of Rome. And you are one of several Germanic tribes. You play, I think you start out playing the Visigoths. I forget what, or just the Goths, which is not actually correct because there was more than one Goth tribe. But getting away from that, but you've got several factions of Germanic tribes, the Huns, the Vandals, and so on and so forth. And your job is to take over the Roman Empire. Interestingly enough, you can take over the Eastern Roman Empire in this. It actually, in terms of gameplay, there are actually two Roman factions. There's the Western Roman Empire, there's the Eastern Roman Empire, and yeah, you win the game by taking over one of those, which is actually not historically accurate because the Germanic tribes tussle and eventually overran and all that. They dealt with the West more than the East. And indeed, the Eastern Roman Empire lasted a good 1,000 years after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. But given that this is a video game, do not expect 100% historical accuracy.
Yeah, I was about to say these nitpicks are from people who are pretty versed in various stages of history. So
I literally have a degree in one. So, yeah, mind you, that doesn't make you an expert in all of history.
Yeah.
But that's that. Anyway, but yeah, so you only get to start out as the beginning faction, and as you play the first campaign, you will encounter other tribes, and you will be able to unlock that particular faction in the menu, and each faction has a special unique ability or a unique starting. Some start out with more food, more treasure. They can have more horsemen or things like that. It's a fairly standard strategy differentiator, and it's not just the turn-based set that does this. Real-time strategy does this too. But anyway, you're playing the Goths. Your job is to overrun the Roman Empire either by direct means, i.e., you conquer them, or by infiltration. You send some of your clans. Units in these games are called clans, although admittedly they don't actually do much with a actual clan system. It's just their name for units. You send 5 units and they convert over to the Roman Empire and they take over within. That kind of thing. So it's your ultimate win condition is, do you want direct control or indirect control? And I will admit, I did not end up getting to that stage, mainly because, so one of the defining traits of 4X games is they're long. I'm I put 10 hours into just the one campaign, and I was somewhere in the midsection. It's 4X strategy games in general demand quite a bit of your time. So just consider that if you are considering buying this game or are interested in it. Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a time sink. Not going to lie there. And in terms of actual strategy, it's I gotta say it's pretty much within the mold of 4X. You know, it's like you explore, you extrapolate, however the 4Xs go. It's like it does those, and you know, it's like mechanic. Like if you're looking for a game that's trying to break away from, say, the Civilization mold, this ain't it. Which is not a surprise because, once again, the experience is kind of steeped into the Civilization model. Like, now, game is touted as being a bit more roguish, as in like the video game rogue, than your average 4X game. What that basically boils down to is the maps are randomly generated instead of being based off of real world geography. That's another break with like the Civilization games. Not necessarily. They tend to be more realistic than this. You know, here the maps are going to be different every time you load up a new game. I'm honestly not sure if that matters all that much, but you know, it's one of those potentially infinite replay value things. Like, you know, as far as how the actual 4X, you know, it's like it's all another difference. This game is a bit simplified compared to, say, Civilization, because it does something out of Age of Empires 3 of all things. You've only got a home settlement. You've only got like your one city, and that's it. In terms of like centers, you know, in Civilization you could build many cities. I suppose to compensate for that, you can move your capital. Although the availability of moving your grand city around does depend on your stage of industry, let's say. Like if you've started to move away from the hunter gatherer mold to not just like farmer. There's more. If you've got like blacksmiths, weaponsmiths, glass makers, bread masters. These are all jobs in the game, by the way. You know, it's going to be harder to move your city then. And yeah, this game also does have progression. You start your game by you know, doing hunt. You know, it's like closer to the Stone Age than anything else, as you've got foragers and you've got like just low level tech here, even for like the late Roman Empire, and you steadily build yourself up along the tech. You know, it's like you go from harvest. You know, you go from foragers to reapers to farmers, and like that's literally what you go to ranchers. You know, it's like, you know, you go up the job trees. You know, if you're familiar with strategy games, all of this is going to look familiar. I'm like, and you're like we're and your main concerns like food, resources like stone and wood, which provide your structures, weapons, which you field your troops, and you also will need certain resources to train in certain professions. And like the higher you go, the more resources that takes. Like for example, Um, archers, if I'm remembering correctly, do not require weapons to train in, but spearmen do, for example. Um, and yeah, it's like if I could just boil it all down, it's like um, it's all very competent 4X strategy stuff with a very, very narrow focus um, on a particular point in history, as opposed to civilization, which is trying to span the grand history roughly of humanity. So that's the contrast. Now, where this game really differs, and in my estimation, what makes it not as good as the Civilization series, is how it handles the other quote unquote barbarian tribes. How it handles the other Germanic, like they exist in your game, but they're not active threats. Like they are, it's like what I'm trying to say is you're not actually in competition with the other Germanic tribes in order to take over the Roman Empire. It's like literally you versus the Romans, and the other tribes are just there.
Most historical tactics games are kind of multilateral.
Right, and that's kind of where this game really lost me, and it's kind of what it made it more tedious. And mind you, these the other tribes can be competition, but that's more in the smaller game. Like they can compete for resources, or they might raid your farms. You might go to war with them, but that's probably because you pissed off their leader. Um, yeah, it's like I can see what the thrust here was. It was focusing on that whole overtaking the Roman Empire thing, but it came at the cost of one of the most standard things of strategy games, and that's multi faction conflict. Because once again, just going back to Civilization, it's not just you versus a grand power; it's you versus several grand powers, and you might get engaged into an alliance. And I guess that's another thing. It dissuades you. It would dissuade you from entering into an alliance with the Romans against the against the Huns, for example. And it's like that one choice really limited the scope. Once again, it's intentional, but it's not good. Because it's such a foundational bedrock to not just 4X strategy, but strategy games in general. That it's at first mystifying, and has another. It also has the aspect of affecting the multiplayer, in that there is no multiplayer in this game. If you go back to our interview, that was confirmed because this was done by a small team, and they had it's like they did not have the resources to do multiplayer. And that, while that is understandable, it is another thing that affects this game because, once again, multiplayer is a pretty standard thing in 4X. I've played Civilization games. They can last a long time too.
Yeah,
Indeed.
Oh my. Yeah, like I've spent entire nights playing Civilization online.
yep, sounds about right.
And that's completely lost here. It's like not just from a hey, what do you and a pack of friends want to do for a multiplayer session, maybe Civ 5 or whatever, but it's also once again, playing against an AI and playing against a human are two fundamentally different things. Playing against humans is usually the better option because, well, humans are more unpredictable, more irrational and all that stuff. Yeah. and you're just not going to get that in this game. And if I'm recalling correctly, that is a thing that isn't forthcoming, because that just wasn't a focus. Now, also worth noting, this game is more hardcore than your average Civilization game because of winter.
Yes, the great thing that makes war go really badly for everybody.
Yes, like winters here are very brutal, which is to be expected, I suppose. But like your great enemy isn't gonna be other tribes, bandits. They do have like neutral factions that are called bandits. Bandits are bandits, but yeah, it's like winter is going to be harsh on your resources because you're not going to be able to grow anything. Your ability to gather resources in general is going to be limited, and so on and so forth. Like a lot of this game is preparing for the winter, which lasts about 10 turns. And it doesn't just affect your production; it'll affect your units. Like your units will start. If you don't take proper care, they'll start to suffer. They'll start to freeze to death. They'll start to run out of food, that kind of thing. So a lot of this game is centered around prepper and surviving the winter. So that's another thing to keep in mind. As far as graphics go, gotta admit, I'm kind of surprised with the art style here. It's a bit more cartoony than I was expecting. Which it's fine. It's all fine. Like as far as the actual graphics, the best. It gets the job done. Everything is everything represents everything. But it's not a looker, which is not a surprise because once again, 4X strategy games aren't really known for the graphical prowess. Music. Now this one was a bit weird because there's really only like the title track, and it's like one of the last games. It will continue to play until it stops, and then you're left playing in silence and sound effects. There's not an actual soundtrack here, so yeah, that was that was
sounds
not
like
good.
an issue when this kind of game doesn't go for a short amount of time usually.
It's not that long of a track either. Like, so yeah, it's like you're gonna have to provide your own soundtrack for this one. Anyway, pricing. Let's see. This game will clock in at $30. I could almost recommend this, but that lack of multiplayer is actually a bit of a big stumbling block against that, because no matter what, you're gonna be this game has limits. And look, it's like it's really hard if you've never played a Civilization game online. It's really hard to express how much you're missing with not having a multiplayer feature here.
Yeah, and
I mean,
right now,
on its own
I was gonna say,
as a strategy game, this is a fine price. In fact, it's on the low end, especially since there's no DLC. But another thing to keep in mind is this isn't a beginner's 4X either. This is more if you've played a fair bit of Civilization or something, something akin to that, and you want something that's more difficult. This is going to be your jam. Once again, so long as if you don't mind just playing the computer. Anyway, Petty, you were about to ask?
well, it's looking like Civ 5 is also going for $30 right now, so
If I had to put the two against each other, I would say go for Civilization. I'm like, granted, that would be just like the base game, not including the expansions. But
and like
once again,
even the expansions right now are on sale, and you'd get the whole pack for $50.
That is a really good price for a full Civilization game. That is modern. Like, I think you can get Civilization 3 for like $10, but we're talking like Civilization 5, Civilization 6.
Yeah, and specifically Civ 5 because John actually worked on that one too. So
Right. Like I said, stacking the two together, my first recommendation would be Civ 5. It's more accessible. It's got multiplayer. It's got more content. Just it's a grander package. It's a more accessible package. But that's not to diminish at the gates here. This is just kind of what happens when you go for a very specific niche. It's also, if you're not interested in dealing with the fall of the Roman Empire, it's another thing you have to look elsewhere for, because this is a very, very targeted 4X game.
but then again, if you're really interested in the fall of the Roman Empire, here you go.
Yes. And if you're looking for like Roman strategy games, trust me, they're not hard to find.
I think like, Rome's on Steam, isn't it?
Caesar, the Caesar series is another good one. I'm not sure if that's 4X, but it's in the same ballpark. I'm like, and there are others. It's like not really going to go over that because that's kind of diverting into the conversation. But overall rating, I give it a 6 out of 10. Like, it's very good at what it does. It's just focused its focus a little too narrowly for my tastes. Like, and it lost like. It's like I understand due to focus and resources that not having a whole bunch of clans, inter Germanic tribe interplay there. But it's like that was a loss. Multiplayer was a loss. It's like, so it's still a fine game, but I couldn't go more than that. Granted, admittedly, I'm not the foremost expert on 4X. This kind of strategy game's never been quite my bag. I mean, I play it. I played it. I respect it, but I'm more of a real-time strategy aficionado. Truth be told, so do bear that in mind. Anyway, so that'll about do it for At the Gates. Coming up after the break, Jack and Jill DX.